Velkommen til endnu en episode med Neutron Performance Podcast. Mit navn er Chen, og i dag så bliver det lidt anderledes, fordi vi skifter over på engelsk. Vi har nemlig en engelsktalende tysker med, så we're gonna switch to English, and I hope it's okay for our listeners, and hope that they don't cringe too much with my accent. But we're gonna talk about a subject today, so that maybe relates to a lot of our listeners, because I know a lot of you are very ambitious about your performance goals in your endurance sports, whether it's cycling, running, or triathlon. And we're going to call the podcast today The Struggles of the Sub-Elite, and all the things that all of us mortals who know that we will never be the top in the world, but we're still ambitious about it. And I found someone who I think knows a bit more than me about this subject, mainly Marlene. So welcome, Marlene.
Hi, thank you.
I know this is maybe your first podcast, and it's a bit of nervousness, but don't worry, it will fade out at some point. And just to clarify, I met you recently at something we call DDEA, Danish. What is it called? Danish
Diabetes and Endocrine
Diabetes
Academy.
Exactly. I'm getting too old to remember these names. And we sort of got funding for research projects. So you're also a PhD student in Copenhagen. So just shortly for our listeners, could you introduce yourself and what you also do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I am originally from Germany. That's why we're speaking English. But I studied biomedicine and translational physiology in Sweden for 5 years. And after that, I moved here to Copenhagen, to Denmark, to do a PhD. And the PhD I do within diabetes and machine learning. So predicting some outcomes in individuals that have type 2 diabetes. But why am I here talking about endurance sports? So I'm also a runner, and I run with the Adidas Speed Squad in Copenhagen, and that is a club for elite or sub-elite runners, actually. And we're a tight community of around 20 people, and you can join if you have certain race cutoffs and times, and are committed to reach new personal bests. And I just also did a big race. I just ran my fourth marathon, and have been training very hard for around a year to run under 3 hours. And that was tough, but finally after the second attempt now I ran the sub 3. And that's why I know a lot about the struggles of the sub-elite, I would say.
Congrats. Yeah, I will also say, Marlene, it's mainly because you, as so many other researchers, you sort of have this, of course, this scientific background and try to look like you have questions and you look for answers in the science to see what could maybe explain why something happens to certain people in a certain setting. And with today's topic, with the sub-elite, I think it's very important for many of us, because we don't have the professional or elite setup around us, the people around us who help us with basic things or more, complicated things. We need to take care of everything ourselves, meaning that we need to make decisions on nutrition, on training, on so many other factors for ourselves, which can sometimes be difficult, can be very complicated in certain ways, because there's so much information out there. So this is where this is the problem we want to address today, where we, as I said, mere mortals wants to try to perform better, but we need to consider other things than the people who have a whole team around them, right? So you're of course also a woman. I'm not. So you know more about struggles from that point of view, which is different. And I think it's also relevant for a guy or for men in general to know that the female body is very different, and there are other symptoms and, like, how can you say, problems related to being maybe overtrained or under nutritioned and so on. So if you had to put your own words on, just in broad terms, which subjects or which aspects in the sub-elite running, for your perspective, do you find the most difficult relating to your performance?
Yeah, I think it's a very tough question, but I would say that the balance that you have to find between sort of having a normal life and working and maybe having a stressful week at work, combining that with your training volume and also your nutrition, that is a challenge that professional athletes, they don't have that, because they are usually in a construct where they can make the endurance sport their whole life. And as sub-elite runners, you identify as a runner, like it becomes the main part maybe also of your personality, but you don't have the resources and the time to dedicate your entire life to it. So that brings a lot of challenges with it. And as you said, I think that we are maybe in a good position there because we work within health research. So for me at home, my boyfriend, he's also a PhD student in muscle physiology, so working also
Wow.
with sports. So we sit at home at dinner when we have our free time, and we think about those types of performance things, right? And the things that we can do to perform in a sustainable way. And that is also not given if maybe you don't have that background. So I don't want to know how hard it could be without that type of background knowledge, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know, should we get started with one aspect about the struggles of the sub-elite? And you mentioned it in the beginning, this relative energy deficiency in sports, RED-S, or REDS, how people refer to it. Maybe I can just give a slight intro.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So if we are exercising, then we always have to watch out that the energy that we're burning matches the energy that we're taking in. So you want to also always be in a situation where you get at least the amount of energy in that you burn. And that's very difficult if we're considering training, let's say, 5 to 20 hours per week, while also having a normal job and having to think about other things. And that's how, if we don't manage to keep the energy availability in a good level, then we can get to problems with low energy availability, and that is then REDS.
Yeah.
And
No, I just want to sort of frame this around, so people maybe have a better way of understanding it. So, because normally I'm the expert here talking way too scientific, so I'll try to go on the other road today and try to take it down a notch to more common language. So you mentioned this RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sports. So it's for people who generally exercise quite a lot, which is more than just 1 or 2 hours a week. And when you do that, you put more constraints on your body. You expect more of it, and you need to, what you say, you need to fuel enough concerning the output that you also do, whether you're running or biking or whatever. And is this, because there's been some discussion about this from the biggest names in sports nutrition, like Asger Jørgendrup, and I remember he put out an article saying that, is RED-S really is it real, or is it just something we just imagined that people do? Because it's really difficult to track, right? Because we're not talking about under nutrition like in a severe way. We are talking about just slightly over time not fueling enough, so that you just steady on the fuel. You lose a bit of weight over time, and with these slow incremental changes in your weight and in your fueling, you don't really feel it that's obvious, and so it can be very difficult for many people to actually respond to it. Because if I tell you to not eat for 2 days and then to run a 10K, you know that you won't perform. But if it's just over 6 months or a year, that you just start slowing down the intake, or taking in enough carbs, let's say that, then you won't get the same response, and then you just think, oh, it's just because I'm training a lot, or it's just because I started to do intervals, or I started to increase my volume, and that could maybe be the reason. But this is the whole picture that we are looking into, that in general this is a problem. Or what would you say about that?
I would say that I'm not the right person to discuss whether Reds as a definition is is controversial, or is an actual thing, or it could be a combination of several other factors. So there, I don't think I'm the right person to comment on that, but I would say that no matter how you call it, low energy availability will result in a variety of physiological conditions or physiological changes that happen in your body. And that is a big problem in athletes, both sub-elite and elites. So instead of wondering about actual definitions, what should we call it? Maybe we can stay with talking about what affects this type of low intake of energies and carbs has, if that makes sense.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Just correct me, that's good.
But I mean, you're right, people are like talking or discussing what you should call it and what it entails. But maybe if we start at the beginning, so in the 1990s, people were talking about the female athlete triad, and that is maybe something that some of the listeners have heard about. And it's a combination of, or it's like a triangle, a combination of three aspects that you often observe in female athletes, and that is energy deficiency, so low energy availability. The athletes, they burn more than they eat. And then also menstrual disturbance. So when you have too little energy uptake, then your menstrual cycle, it will get disordered, or it will even stop. People lose their periods. And then the third part in that triangle, it's low bone density, so that the bone, it becomes more fragile and you have a higher risk to get fractures. And that was sort of the starting image that emerged in the 1990s. And there people were talking mostly about women. But after that, people have discussed, or the International Olympic Committee, they have discussed that it's not just about those three things. It's actually all, and not just in females, it's actually also a problem that we see in men and individuals with a biological male sex, if we want to specify. And now they agreed in 2023, so the latest consensus statement that people can also look up if they're interested, they have 14 symptoms. So it went from the triangle to a circle with 14 symptoms that just eating too little can have on your body. So it affects the majority of like your organs and so many things in your life. Yeah.
And for me personally, of course, I see a lot of different people. I train sub-elites, also a bit elites, and I also see the common person like myself, where you would think that it's maybe not a problem, and probably it isn't for many, but for some it is, because we don't weigh the same all year round, and there are some periods in the year, especially around competition season, where we want to cut down, and then we see the negative effects on this. And we will discuss it later on whether it's good or not, because it does have some role to play in high performance. But
Yeah.
especially for the young people who goes into sports, who maybe doesn't have the same experience or knowledge about weight and food, and they just tend to go into this belief that the less is more, in this regard, in weight, because it works at some point, but then you just hit a, let's call it a threshold or something like that, where you start to get all these symptoms that you mentioned.
Mm.
And even seeing people, change behavior and the skin color and so on.
Yeah. I would say that if when we talk about this, we can distinguish into something that is adaptable, so that you can change back to normal very quickly. So people talk about adaptable low energy availability and problematic low energy availability. And adaptable means something where for a short time, either because you have stress at work, you forget your breakfast sometimes, you can sort of slide in to a couple of days where you take in too little energy. That would be adaptable if you then spend some days and maybe you eat an extra snack, or you start taking some extra protein drink with carbs or something. But there's also problematic low energy availability, and that is what takes time to fix, and that is also what gives you the long-term issues, like fractures, or like breaking your bone, or some problems with your reproductive system, and yeah, all of those things. So we really need to remember that there's adaptable but also problematic low energy availability.
Yeah, and I think the important thing here is that you need to be aware of this. And for most people, it's either or, it's either they eat too little or they eat too much. And that's not this understanding that your weight can fluctuate.
Well, you say either they eat too little or they eat too much. I would say, from my perspective, when I talk to other runners and so on, I would say in running, or in the level of running that we do and the level of biking that we do, my kind of hypothesis is there is no too much.
Okay.
So I would always advise not to spend time on thinking whether you eat too much if you're in the sub-elite space. If you gain, let's say, 5 kilos over some month, yeah, maybe you should think about it. But I would say let's not spend too much time to think whether we eat too much, and only focus on whether we eat too little, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
don't
of
know
course.
how you feel.
No, like for me again, I see a lot of different people. So some of the people that I coach, some of the people, especially in nutrition, they train maybe 3 to 5 hours a week. So their goal is not like really high performance. They just want to complete races and feel good
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And in that regard, they they don't they don't want to just fuel with 90 grams an hour because they don't need it.
mm,
And
mm,
so in this sense, they can eat too much for themselves. But of
exactly. Yeah.
course, the topic today is of the sub elite, right? So it's mostly people who
Mm.
train at least, I would say, 8 hours a week.
Yeah, like it depends. I would say uh, minimum of 5, sort of.
Yeah.
There is also people that can run in the sub-elite levels, but they have lower volumes or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in the sub-elites, we don't necessarily need to spend time thinking of how to lose weight in a way. But of course, when you say exercise in society is also about getting fitter, like getting a healthier heart, right? So then it's definitely the energy balance. It's not just about preventing low energy availability, but like not becoming overweight, and this while training and so on. That's also about not having a positive balance,
Yeah.
so not taking in too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say for running, which is the sport that we both do most of, there's sort of this tendency, especially for women, as far as I can remember, in Denmark at least, where young women comes into the scene, they perform quite well, maybe a year or two, and they just, you can see it physically on their body. They start to change, and of course, I'm a medical doctor, so I've seen a lot of different people, but just the characteristics of, the cheeks are sunken in, the hips are being totally straight, also the thighs and so on, and the skin starts to change, and so on, where it's, I wouldn't say that it doesn't affect guys as much, but I think there's some sort of more awareness about women. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but
Yeah.
we sort of see them perform really well for 1 or 2 years, and then they just sort of burn out. They crash, and then
Mm.
they have the broken bones and so on continuously, and then
Yeah.
they maybe step out, or they repeat this cycle over and over.
I would say I have a bit of a problem talking about the visuals in women, because I think that is a topic that is a bit over discussed, and
Yeah.
also a bit tricky from my perspective as a woman. For instance, in April, that was right before my marathon attempt number 1 for the sub-3, I was talking to a friend of the family, and he was wondering if I had the right body, or if I was built a bit too heavy to run a sub-3 marathon. And just that in society you think it's okay, or like people think it could be okay to ask people something like, or like specifically women, something like that, I think is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then when I said, well, that's not really okay to comment on that, then the response from another friend of the family was that, well, yeah, but I think it's really good to have the type of body that you have, because when you look at the start lines with the fastest female runners, they don't look healthy, they don't look female anymore. So I don't know why it's such a big thing to comment on women's body. I would say that if we look at males, there's the same effects, that when people start picking up a sport, then of course something changes in their body. And we've seen it sometimes. For example, it's normal that when someone is trying out for a sports team and they start really picking up the volume, then also in men you see these kinds of consequences of the increased volume and something like that. But of course, Reds is more prevalent in women. And when we kind of look aside from the visuals, it's also been shown in studies that in female elite athletes and sub-elite athletes, disordered eating is more common, around double as common as in males. But in the sub-elite athlete, the women, compared to the elite women, we see also that it's almost double as common in the sub-elite compared to the elites. So we have it like Reds more common in women than men, and more common in sub-elite women than elite women. But that trend, seeing it that it's more prevalent in sub-elites, that's also present in males.
Yeah, yeah.
So just talking about a bit of the prevalence.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. And the reason I mentioned all the, how to say, the description was
Mm,
exactly the point, that we have a tendency to describe the women body more
yeah,
than the male body.
definitely. Yeah.
And that was, I'm not sure. Like, I also have a tendency to do it, and I've been
Mm,
told times that I shouldn't, but I did it. How do you say, purposefully here, just to
yeah.
illustrate it,
Yeah.
that there is this notion about male and female body, because maybe, yeah, I don't know, that men has this image of that's just how it should be, whereas for women it's different. But okay, let's just leave it there. I think
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, what you just mentioned with the prevalence, because it sort of
Mm,
illustrates that this because the sub-elite field is much larger than the elite field, of course. And again, because the elite field has people around them, maybe, to sort of help them with all of these problems, whereas the sub-elite has to deal with the things for themselves, could be. But it shows you that this is a big problem for many people, and I mean, just for those of us who have been going to races and so on, it tends to show also in the performance, right? Because this is what how to say, the purpose of this podcast is, like, to see how well can you perform, and the clear I would say line or subject from this podcast is that you will perform worse if you're still stuck in this, and if you are under fueling, then you also have a higher risk of going into these eating disorders and so on. Am I correct?
Yeah, or it's like vice versa, right? So if you are in an eating disorder, then you are more at risk to have Rets, and if you have Rets, you're also more at risk to have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this bi-directional aspect. But when we talk about performance, for example, there's a cool study that recently came out from, I think it was the University of Copenhagen, and Jeppesen et al. Was the name. They looked at 12 female endurance athletes, and they took one group and they went on the perfect diet with the right energy availability, or the right amount of calories that were taken in, and carbs, and then they had a group that was in low energy availability, and that was a bit less than half, I believe, of the calories that the normal nutrition was taking in. And then after 14 days of this kind of test, they compared the groups again. So they took a baseline test, and then they did this 14 days of different energy intake. And then afterwards, they looked again at their bodies, at their cortisol and immune system, and also performance. And what they showed is that after those 14 days, there was a 4% drop in relative power output on the bike. So that is the performance adjusted for their body weight. So people talk a lot about losing weight to increase your relative power on the bike because you divide it by the body weight, right? But they saw a 4% drop in the power. And even after 3 days of refueling, so even after 3 days then of eating normal again, there was still this drop of 4% that remained. And that is quite a nice example also for us as runners, or for cyclists or endurance athletes in general, that if you think about 14 days, like, it's so normal, like you can have a stressful time, you go to a conference or you go on a party vacation or something, and you don't watch out that you get enough energy or sleep, or now let's leave sleep out of here, like we just think about energy. Then 14 days, that's super realistic. That can happen to any one of us. And then you have a race after, and then you can really expect a loss in speed and power and endurance, which I think is really important to remember. And then also they found that they had increased cortisol, and cortisol is something that is a hormone that is associated with a chronic stress response. So what can we take from there, or what can we sort of interpret from there? It means that our body, the whole 14 days that we put this low energy availability on the schedule, our body is under stress because it doesn't get enough calories to maintain our usual function and training. And then for the immune system, you also affect it very much, because so you kind of turn down your ability to fight a cold. Sometimes when you meet a person who has a cold, then the body is so fit or so strong that even though you're in contact with this kind of virus or bacteria, it doesn't make it into your body or make it into a full-blown cold or sickness, period of sickness, but you can fight it. But if we are in this low energy availability, then our body is at a worse place to fight this type of stress. So yeah, just from that studies, there's so much that we can learn also for our real life and for the sub-elites, I would say.
Yeah, really, really nicely presented. You can really feel that you are academic, Marlene, in this sense. I would say yes. For a lot of people, when we talk high performance, it's this with the 14 days. I would also say that there's a timing aspect in this, because in general, people who, when we are, a lot of us are stressed, we also tend to eat differently. Things with different quality, things with a different profile, glycemic index, and so on. So maybe going to more the sweeter corner of the diet instead of eating whole grain and then vegetables and so on, which will also sort of affect our eating behaviors that can maybe make it less favorable. Because in this sense, we only talk about general calories, right? Because but it's not the same of fueling on Mars bars or Snickers bars or whatever you like,
Yeah.
and then eating whole grain foods every day.
Yeah, although I'm a big fan of, if we're talking sub-elite and elite performance, and I'm a big fan of candy and Mars bars and all those things, because I think it was sort of on the agenda to talk about later also a little bit.
Yeah.
That when we think about this high fiber and health foods compared to non-health foods and what should we eat, considering reds, it's important that we get enough energy, right?
Yes.
So there I would more say it of course it depends that you eat good quality foods, but it mostly depends on not getting enough or getting enough, and there whether that's a Mars bar or something with full grain.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
it
I
makes sense.
think, yeah, of course. We did a whole podcast where we discussed it, that in broad terms, there aren't really good or bad food. It just depends on the situation, right? So if
Mm,
you ran a marathon, then drinking a Coca-Cola afterwards is perfectly fine,
yeah.
because you need the sugar, you need the liquid and the salts, electrolytes as well. Whereas if you sit every day on the couch, just eating your dinner, and then you sit on your couch for 2 hours and drinking half a liter of Coca-Cola every evening, then that's maybe
Mm,
not so good. So it has to be
yeah.
in context of the situation, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And maybe I can sort of also talk about a personal experience here if we're
Yep.
talking about that. So I actually started running in 2020. It was sort of the COVID running, where everything, team sports, it was shut down and you would go out and run in nature. And I started running pretty quickly, that I increased the volume and it was going really well and the training was good. But it was at a place where I didn't know so much about performance and nutrition, right? So I just kept eating like what I had learned, this high fiber and full corn, or what do you call it, Rogbrot. Um, Everything that sort of the general health advice to the population is like eat some chickpeas or like eat lentils, and I just started running at high volumes with following the general recommendations. And next to that, there, like I would say, especially in women, there was also some form of culture in the time that, like I maybe grew up, that it was about clean eating, low carb, non-refined sugar, fasting 8-16, or you eat 8 hours per day and you fast 16 hours, or like some of those things. They were still with me when I was starting to run in 2020. I say they were still with me because now I think all of those are very, very tricky for runners to follow.
Mm.
But yeah, so when you do that, when you follow the general advice and then you increase your volume and you turn into a sub-elite runner, I would say that at least I quite quickly realized that it's not possible. Like, I was tired all the time. My legs were hurting every day. Like, I couldn't remember a day I started running without legs that hurt. Like, you become moody. You are just tired. Yeah, all of those things. Luckily, no sort of fracture or real consequence that happened. But that kind of made me get to a point where I really questioned everything, where I questioned, is the advice that is out there and that I've learned, is that really matching what I'm doing right now? And my way out of that was completely taking away the focus of the weight loss. As I said
Yeah,
earlier,
yeah.
like, I don't think about eating too much. I only think about eating too little at the moment, personally, for myself. And eating more than I ever thought, or more than my appetite was telling me to eat for a while. So out of that hole in 2021, after, like, I just could feel like nothing was working anymore, I ate more than I had an appetite for, and I took the shift away from worrying about eating too much. And then I just, like, changed my energy intake, and those things went away, right? Or maybe I had to slow down my running for, I think, half a year or so. I just stopped with the volume again, and then I could pick it up again. Yeah, now I don't know where we were anymore.
No, no, no.
But
It's
yeah,
completely great. Because I sort of had the same experience. You go from this point where you always, I think most people tend to worry about their weight, because that's just human nature, to a point where you feel all these symptoms that you talked about, and you sort of, the problem switches, right? And you really hit it hard on the nail, that you cannot lose weight and then increase the volume or the intensity of your training at the same time. That doesn't is in general not connected. uh Maybe
yeah,
except cutting until a race, but that's a whole nother thing. But in general
well,
terms, you cannot both lose weight and perform better and still have a well functioning body without high amounts of cortisol in your blood. um
mm,
and maybe for some of the listeners, it's like, oh, that's pretty nice for you that you don't have to worry about weight and so on. But yeah, that's how the perspective in metabolism and weight and physiology changes when you put a lot of stress on the body by running a
yeah,
lot of hours every week, right? And that is the thing we need to repeat to people, because they need to understand that the context is always the most important thing. And if you switch back, you get injured. You shouldn't eat as much. And I think for most people, they can also feel that their hunger, the desires to eat, will also tend to go down, maybe faster for some than for others. But your body is
mm,
really good at regulating that for so many things. You shouldn't fall in this how to say, in these pits at
yeah,
times.
yeah. And now, yeah, you mentioned that it's good that I'm a woman, that I'm here and we talk about it. So I would also say that if like hormonal disruption, or like, as we talked about the triad and reds, of course, we should also talk about changes in the menstrual cycle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say that this is probably something that affects every woman or person with a cycle that starts running. Like, there can be irregularities in your cycle that are related to either to this stress hormone cortisol, this chronic stress that we put on our body by not eating enough or maybe overtraining. And there I was at a sports science conference this summer, and people were talking a lot about the hormonal cycle when talking about performance. And I think the key takeaways that I took from there is one, the normal cycle of a or what's normal in women is not maybe this very like textbook cycle of the different phases, but it's actually normal that it's very different in all women. So
Yeah.
it's more than normal that there is differences between women than it's normal that there's this standard curve. And it's a very good indicator that you're getting too little energy or that you're stressed if you lose your menstrual cycle. But you always kind of have to investigate it or go to the doctor to find out whether the reason is Reds or whether the reason is other causes. And they, at the conference, for instance, they presented some case examples, because now science is shifting to kind of describe the variance or the differences across athletes or female athletes. And there was, for example, a cyclist, elite cyclist, has a lot of help from nutritionists and so on, and they ate enough. They had a nutritionist that followed, that they always got their energy, but they still, during the main season, this cyclist lost their period. And then this was about stress, for instance, or the stress of competing, which in the elite can be normal. But if we look at sub-elites, the most common cause of disruptions in the menstrual cycle then is about not getting your nutrition right.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. Hormones and performance and the menstrual cycle, people are not so close to find a common recommendation, for example.
Yeah. And for my my interaction with elite women, they, at least those who sort of figured it out, if you can say that, they sort of tend to put their month into, of course, 4 weeks, and then they know, okay, these 2 weeks it's really great, where I don't menstruate and so on. And then when the ovulation comes and so on, and then afterwards they menstruate, then they know that this week I cannot push it, then I need to take it down
Yeah.
a notch.
But it's very
It
personal. So, like at the conference, they presented a study in bicyclists, and cyclists, and it was very well controlled. So they measured the hormones, they measured the fluctuations of the hormones to decide or distinguish the different phases of the cycle. And some women, they performed best at ovulation, and some other women, they performed best when they had their menstruation. So it's really like you can't even say sort of it works best at a
No.
specific phase. It's like for some people it works at this phase, and for some it works at the other phase, and that's why it's so hard to make studies about it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But I have also a study that I looked up for that. So if we're now wondering what difference does it make for my performance if I now have lost my cycle or if I have a normal or regular cycle. And there's actually a study in Sweden where they tested, or I think it was a group of Finnish runners, and they asked the runners 2 times at baseline and then at follow-up whether they had their period or whether they had a normal menstrual cycle or whether they had amenorrhea, which is sort of not having a cycle. And in this group of young elite runners, half of the group of runners did not have a menstrual cycle, which that is a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And they were injured more and they ran less than their counterparts that had a healthy eumenorrheic cycle. And then when they looked at baseline to over the course of the year, then the runners with a cycle, they increased their performance over the year, and the runners without a healthy menstrual cycle, they did not increase. And I think if people need a motivation to check out their cycle or like contact support, then I think it's just very nice study showing please go to the GP or go to your almen læge and please get a referral to check with a gynecologist.
Yeah, great point. Just to clarify it for the people if it got a bit too technical, so it was just words about having a menstrual cycle that wasn't regular, or that's you weren't menstruating, or variations in the whole process that tended to be associated with stress fractures and so on in general for this group of young women, and so the people who sort of gets this, especially for running, because it's such a hard how to say mechanistic sport for our lower limbs compared to cycling, for example, then you will see the consequences of this. Like every single elite runner that I know have had stress fracture, both women and men. But especially for women that are so reliant on the estrogen and so on, then it becomes even higher risk. So yeah, let's try to take it to the last point. We sort of need to jump over a few steps because we love talking so much about this. So let's take the practical considerations now and the solutions to how to avoid going into energy deficiency. So what is your general advice?
Yeah, well, to be first and foremost, I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't like to give out advice, but I would like to maybe share some things that I do.
Yeah, of course.
Or that I kind of implemented during marathon training, for example. So I was really careful, or I was really I did not want to lose weight during marathon training, and I did not want to lose my cycle during marathon training. And some like general rules that I maybe also already mentioned is like, number one, don't worry about gaining weight, sorry. Don't worry about gaining weight, worry about losing weight. And then I had some sentences that I like to say. So eating fries is fine if you're otherwise not meeting your energy needs. Or like, it's better to eat fries and chocolate than not getting above the line and being in an energy deficient space during marathon training. And then it's a bit funny actually. So I know a lot of people, they worry about processed foods or ultra processed foods and so on. But I really sat down and thought about what can I do to maintain my cycle and what can I do to maintain my weight. And my answer to that was that I was probably not getting enough protein at that time. Also, I was, I don't know. I found it a bit hard to get enough protein, but also I wanted to get a bit of extra carbs. And what I did then is I looked around for a protein shake with that also included carbs. And where do you find those kinds of products? You find it in the bodybuilding scene. So if you go to like a normal protein shop or something, you look and you're like, oh, I want a protein shake with carbs. And then the best thing I found, in my opinion, it was like this lean mass gainer or mass gainer, which people like that don't run or do endurance sports, they take that to like get ripped, right? So they take that to really increase their mass. But in a runner that is more often than not in an energy deficient state, this type of carbs, it can just be the protective 300-400 calories that brings you over the red line and gets you into the green and helps you maintain your period. So for me, that was my personal tip that I did, and it worked. Like it worked for me, and I would say there's again this not being scared of taking in too much calories. If I would have had this state of 2015 where it was about low carb and like this old like non-processed food, then I wouldn't have done that. I would have been scared of that step. But from the running perspective, it just made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with fiber, I'm a fan of fiber. I try to eat a lot of fiber, but yeah, there I also have the rule that it's good for health, but bad before races, or specifically if it displaces carbs. So I have a friend, she used to eat so much salad while running with a lot of volume, and it's great to eat salad, but if you eat so much salad that after the salad you can't get the actual pasta meal into your belly because your belly is full and this fiber then displaces the carbs, then that's bad for your performance, and that might also lead you into the red zone again, right?
Yeah.
So she was talking in Sweden to a Olympic trainer and also, or like an Olympic nutritionist, and they also told her, I think you're getting too little carbs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with fiber, just be careful that it leaves space for enough pasta and rice or healthy other carbs to make it actually into your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also studies that ask athletes about how much they think they consumed and how much they actually ate before a race. And athletes, they tended to underconsume and overestimate. So we have to check ourselves that even if we think, wow, I ate so much, like I carb loaded, I had so many calories before the race. Usually, most of us, we tend to underconsume and overestimate, and that is also something that maybe is based on some experiences we had before or things we learned during our teenage years on what to eat and what not to eat, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, you really came prepared. Uh,
Yeah.
so great information. I just want to clarify once again that everything has to put in context. So if you are, let's say just a general population, we wrote this down, and you are not
Mm.
exercising that much, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours a week, then this how to say advice or recommendation or experiences might
Not
not be for
advice,
you.
just experience. Yeah.
Experiences, we would call it experiences. It's not for you because in general, if you want to be healthy, eat a lot of fiber, eat a lot of vegetables, and with good quality. But when you gradually start to train more, your body needs more energy, as we have established. And is especially for sports nutrition, which is more refined sugar, which is more simple sugars, without fiber, because your stomach should not worry about processing long chains carbohydrates, because it needs the energy right away because you just use it.
Mm.
Then there's more space for actually eating things that in general terms might not be good for your health. So I also eat a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
I my like my mom sold cakes for a living when I was young, so I sort of grew up with a very sweet tooth, and still am. So when you start to exercise more, then you will feel what you rightfully said, that if you only eat a lot of vegetables with a lot of fibers, you will tend to feel full all the time, and then you will actually tend to underfuel and then get into these problems. Um,
Yeah.
which the sub-elites, very interestingly, as you mentioned, tend to underestimate how much they actually fuel, and that they fall into this. So for a performance perspective, not a health perspective,
Mm.
well, maybe also a health perspective, because if you underfuel for a long time, then you also tend to get sick. Then you
Yeah.
actually need to eat more. Like we have the Norwegian triathletes, like they just took the whole podium in this year in the World Championship, right?
Mm.
They have been so open about that they don't worry about what they eat at all. They eat as much as possible. They also train like crazy, but still,
Yeah.
um, you need to have a variation, and you can eat processed food, which is also a whole nother topic about what is processed food and is it all the same. It's not, but yeah, let's not go there
Yeah.
today. So everything in perspective, right?
But now you mentioned Norwegian athletes, and I really want to jump on that because I also have prepared an example on a Norwegian athlete, and it's Jonas Abrahamsen, who's a cyclist.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard about his Tour de France last year.
Yeah,
But
of
he
course.
went very viral because he was going out to the media and talked about how he gained 20 kilograms after shifting from a obsession to be as light as possible towards a more sustainable weight and performance and power. And he also showed some severe signs of Reds because he talked about how he grew 6 centimeters after he changed his energy intake.
Jesus.
And there we can see that if you are in Reds while you are in puberty or while you are still developing, then you can have a delayed puberty, and you can, like, once you get the energy back, you can still grow. Like, just the 6 centimeter and 20 kilogram gain, like, which then led to him having his best season yet, right? Like, last year he was all everywhere, or he got the climbing jersey and everything. So yeah, now I had to jump on that because you mentioned Norwegians, but it's really a crazy example, I think, and it also just highlights that it's especially bad if you are in Reds, if you are a young athlete. Also, not just with growing 6 centimeters, but this delayed puberty that also can mean that female runners that are in Reds at the time when they are supposed to get their period or start their menstruation, then that can also be delayed. So just a crazy example, I think, thinking about what can happen when you address your struggles with energy intake.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good example because usually we see this, at least when running, these East African runners who just tend to have a whole nother, body shape, and their whole structure is just anatomically different. But someone coming from our own, how do you say, team, our own ranks, addressing this problem. And I think there's a professional Danish cyclist, Emma Norsgaard, who recently also talked about this problem, and I know so many others have also talked about it, where they tend to explain that it took some time for them to realize that this was the problem. Like, you can train, you can go into a cave and train your brains out, but if you don't fuel enough, it's like you cannot drive a car without enough fuel, right? So it's up to you, and for many, the human body is able to adapt to a certain point until it can't, and then you are forced to make a decision or stop. It's just the goal of this podcast is to illustrate that this is a problem for many, especially young. So maybe for those of you who listen who aren't, I wouldn't say young anymore, but relatively maybe, but have kids who are going into sports, you need to be aware of this. How to say, symptom of the system, where we tend to always evaluate the weight, and that's just not how it works anymore. Fortunately, there are many, especially in the cycling community in Denmark, who are saying, like, we are taking 90, maybe even 120, or maybe even more grams per hour on the bike to sort of show that this is the new norm, and they also perform much better compared to decades ago, right? So what is your take about all of this sports nutrition field, regarding, you are in a podcast with Neutron and with me, but, like, just, is it something that you think people should be aware of? Maybe not only sports nutrition, but also chocolate milk, which I would also define as sports nutrition in my case. And also you written orange juice and so on, and gels. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a key thing to prevent injury, right? So during every hard session, take a gel or like every session, I think it's longer than an hour, you should fuel, right? Or some
Yeah.
even give the guideline to be a bit shorter. But yeah, I think it can change a lot. And I think about it in a way that if now people are obsessing about weight loss and performance, then I like to think of it like you have marginal gains from every kilogram that you can lose, perhaps for performance, but you put yourself in a very high risk situation where if you go too far, which is very difficult to know when is it too far, then you are not running at all anymore because you have a stress fracture, right? So by taking sports nutrition seriously, you can prevent getting an injury, because overuse fractures or stress fractures, they are 2 to 4 times as common in individuals that don't fuel correctly. So I see it as a way of both making you faster, but also like preventing that you don't slow down to zero because you can't run anymore. And then, I love orange juice. People also, when I was a teenager, were talking about how bad it is to drink juice and it's this hidden calories. But I absolutely love drinking calories. I love to drink orange juice or sweet sodas after training, or chocolate milk. It's the best. So that's my way of taking or like addressing sports nutrition. But then also gels on every long run, more than one gel in every short hard session that is about an hour or longer. Gel, I just really try to always eat. As I
Yeah.
said, I don't worry about eating too much, I only worry about eating too little. And by after changing, like also from a personal perspective, after changing that or after realizing those types of things, like I haven't gained in weight, because who would gain weight when they are running like 7 hours per week? It's like almost impossible. Like good luck trying to gain weight when you are running at it or biking at a sub-elite level.
Yeah.
And then finally, I also want to make the distinction, or what I think is important is that elite sports, it's not healthy. And maybe, or elite athletes tend to be healthier than the general population, but what elite athletes have to do to get a gold medal or to really become the best of the best, many things that they have to do, they're not like according to general health advice. So I also try to think about, when we think about the things defined as healthy, they're defined as healthy because it's healthy for the general population. The general population runs between, or the recommendations are to do more than 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise per week. And that results in a general recommendation of 2,000 calories per day, approximately. Of course, women and men, it is a difference. But endurance athletes, we often train more than 500 minutes per week. So if we don't follow the training advice, if we're training more than the general advice, then the general nutrition advice is also not right for us. So it's really important to think about it from that perspective also.
Yeah. Of course. Um, I think that was really great to come to an end. I will just. Do you want to say the quote, or should I say the quote that you wrote?
What's my quote? I don't remember.
It's okay. It's a quote from the sports medicine conference that you were in,
Oh
maybe.
no, I think it was a bit off when I sent it, but that was just about, maybe now when we close, maybe we can say what can people do, or who can they talk to
Yeah, of
when they
course.
realize maybe I'm in the state that I don't get enough energy, I have lost my period, and so on. So generally, I would say seek advice, or at least education, or some like help. Project Red S is a website that has a lot of guidelines, also for people that don't have a science background. So whenever it stops to be fun or working, so if you're not if you're also for men, if you're not increasing your performance over time, if you're tired, maybe double check your energy intake and go to this Project Red S website. For example, if you have an overuse fracture, big sign of low energy availability, check it up. And at the S5, this was a Swedish conference. We had a Red S symposium with one of the experts, and there it's actually that they recommended that you need to go to the allmänläge, the GP. I don't know if how you call it, if it's correct. Yeah. So you, if you can feel that you are struggling, this is your number one medical contact, or contact a nutritionist if you don't have any health conditions or consequences from this low energy intake. Yeah, but maybe we can close it off with a quote. I've been seeing a lot recently that, for example, during the Copenhagen half, there was a sports brand who had the slogan, run on hard mode, or if running was easy, it would be called walking. There's a lot of culture at the moment that the harder, the better. But from my perspective, it's probably because like this type of sustainable message, like run smart, run long, it's not really sexy when you want to sell a product or some like really cool like sports outfit. So I would say just like if you are sub-elite, it's best to consider that you have to both perform during your work life and family life and love life and with your friends, but also running. And in order to do that, you need to train and eat sustainable. So I would say maybe that's a good quote to leave this.
I don't know if I wrote this or you wrote this, but I found this quote, set yourself up for success, not for survival. I think it's pretty good. Sort of encapsulates what we have discussed today. So and it all boils down to yourself. You need to learn to listen to your body, listen to the symptoms. Don't just follow other advice blindly, and know that the demands changes over time as your maybe your volume or your intensity or even your level increases, right? So you need to be able to do that. And I will also say that we have some people who are curious about this, that have written to us in Neutron, and of course those who are still here in the podcast, you are very welcome to write. I'm both a doctor and a nutritionist, so I can maybe help you and tell you to go to your own doctor or help you before that if it's not so severe. So with that, Marlene, I would say thank you so much. You are really, really knowledgeable, and you're really, as every female academic, you prepare so well for everything. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and it was a lot of fun. And I hope it's just something that I spend so much time in my free time on that I hope it maybe helped some people.
Ja. Og med de ord, så vil jeg sige tusind tak, fordi I lyttede med. Vi ses.